end of there talking about the fact that this dispersal order has had to be introduced because there were so many members of the public from right around England coming, trying to solve the case themselves. Why do some cases really capture the public imagination and others don't?
Well, I think this is such a mystery and it's so hard to figure out what's going on. So that encourages people. They want to solve the puzzle of it. They want justice for the person who's disappeared. And so what happens is online you get people coming together around a common topic that they have, that they're finding purpose together, they've got something in common, and they form a community. They feel like they belong to that community, they find acceptance there, belonging there, and that's quite a strong thing that really connects people and brings them together. And then within that, you've got sharing of a huge amount of information. Like people are processing an enormous amount of information. Because of that, you get a huge amount of sharing of misinformation. Social media doesn't encourage us to process information at a deeper level, to think slowly about it or rationally about it. It helps us or encourages us to process it more in an automatic way, more intuitive way, and that makes us much more prone to errors and cognitive biases. So you see things like, uncertain facts or hearsay repeated continuously until they become facts within the community that go unchallenged, and that causes a lot of problems.
When we talk about these, armchair detectives, I think it's the phrase being used, are they predominantly women? Is that the evidence?
There's certainly more women, particularly around anything to do with true crime, and there's some evidence from research that that is to do with our instinct for survival, to understand why crimes happen, why criminals behave the way they do, so that you might spot red flags yourself if you come across somebody.
As a woman, you feel you're more likely to be a victim of a crime.
Yeah, exactly. And how to survive something if it does happen. People look at examples where someone's kidnapped and they escape and they think, well, that's how she escaped. Maybe I'll need to use that in future. And so that's one of the reasons why women are so involved in cases like this.
John, I'm wondering what impact it has when you have all of these conspiracy theories online on the police investigation, if you sort of undermine public confidence in an investigation like that, as is happening in the UK with the investigation into Nicola Bulley?
It depends on the police officers involved. So investigations of this type follow a certain route. Not all of that will be in the public domain. So there's activities, I've absolutely no doubt, are going on in the background to this, where people are being examined, their phone data, very deep dives into lots of different issues. And that's just a precautionary measure in many ways. There'll be people who may have past history, violent histories, etc., who may be known to the police, will be, where were they? Could they have been in that area? Have they the potential to take someone? And this goes on in any of these investigations. This isn't unique to this. So usually with a police inquiry, will remain focused in that. I think where the British police in particular can be very vulnerable to outside commentary and that kind of thing. And I think it becomes even more difficult when you have a plethora of so-called experts giving all sorts of advice and theories on this thing. The truth of the matter is that that inquiry team will probably be following certain lines of inquiry that they're keeping very much to themselves.
So this idea that the police have sort of stuck rigidly to this one hypothesis that Nicola Bulley fell into the river, you say that's possibly not true. That could be a strategy by the police.
It's not. I'm not saying it's possibly not true. I'm telling you it's not true. Police investigations follow certain processes. They're the same the world over. Police forces behave and detectives are trained in a particular way. They're suspicious, pesky characters by their nature who don't take anything at face value. And they usually operate investigations of this type where they'll trace and eliminate and identify someone that may be of interest to them while searching for this woman to see what's happened to her. But I mean, most of them are capable of keeping an open mind. There has, unfortunately, of course, in the past been cases where people haven't and they focus in on a suspect, and that is really, really dangerous. But there are usually safeguards around that stop that from happening.
Has the rise in popularity, Nicola, of true crime podcasts and true crime TV series, has it had an influence on this?
It definitely has. Those kind of things are infotainment. And now what you've got is participatory infotainment, where people can actually take part in the investigations themselves. So I think things like Serial and Making a Murderer just caused an absolute explosion in people wanting to take part and being interested in this. So going from absorbing the entertainment to being part of the entertainment themselves. And, you know, I think when you've got groups of people who are maybe anxious or feel powerless, or they're marginalized groups who are experiencing a feeling that the hierarchy or the power in the country is against them. So, for example, women in the UK at the moment, the police force has a problem with women and how they've investigated within their own ranks and high-profile cases. And so there's a degree of mistrust amongst women. And so there's a reaction to that, I think, amongst women. And now they're trying to take control of the situation in a way by getting involved in the investigation. And that's part of why people get involved in this. And it's part of where the conspiracy theories develop from as well. In a situation that's very uncertain, you're trying to find meaning and certainty in it. And so alternative narratives help give back some control to people who are creating them.
Is there any evidence that any of those sort of conspiracy theories online can be helpful to an investigation?
Conspiracy theories, not really, no. There's some examples of groups, but they tend to be groups that are set up more long-term, that use people's skills. For example, in the US, there's groups that look at bodies that were found who they can't be identified, and they try to identify coroner's reports or missing persons reports that might match those bodies so that they can identify them. But that's a long-term project. This is more like a frenzy online, a digital frenzy. It's short-term. It'll be forgotten about by a lot of people quite quickly. But at the moment, it's very consuming for a lot of people.